Welcome. We just want to say thank you for joining us this evening for our visit with The Kids Are Home. Now what? 5 survival tips for schooling at home. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, schooling at home terrifies my spirit and my mind and my heart, as well as my children. I think it was a nightmare for them to think that I might homeschool them. So I have invited 2 wonderful women who are homeschool moms and also are part of this community. And I would like to introduce them to you so they can share with us some tips to help us as parents who are ready to pull our hair out, because we are now expected to not only work from home, but also to help school our children from home when we've never done this before. So I want to welcome Carol Dunfree and Jennifer McKinney. Thank you for joining me today. Carol, I know that you have a lot of different responsibilities, or in my timeline, we would call it you wear many hats. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Well, I do write a blog once a week for Alaska Christian Women's Ministry, and I am a musician. I run my private piano studio at my house, and I homeschool 3 kids. So yeah, lots of hats.
Well, you look like you still have your hair, so I think you're doing pretty good there. And it's even not showing any special colors, which everybody's saying is going to happen real soon because of this pandemic. How about you, Jennifer? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I also work with Alaska Christian Women's Ministry. I run their website and help to make sure everything runs smoothly. And I also work in a ministry called Child Evangelism Fellowship, CEF, and we do most well known for doing good news clubs in elementary schools. And so my family and I are very involved in that, and I'm actually the family ministry coordinator for that ministry as well. And I also homeschool 3 kids.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm glad to know that you youngins have it all together and can do that many things. I think when I was your age, I probably was able to also. But that's another story that we'll visit another time. How's that sound? Hey, I don't know about you guys, but we're recognizing some very big challenges right now in our lives, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
And the pandemic is really throwing things for a loop. It's a crisis that has hit not only our country, but also the world. Now, when crisis hit, it causes all of us to operate and act a little bit differently, and not only physically, but also emotionally. And I would call that a crisis. Now, Carol, I understand that you've had a crisis in your life in the last year or so. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Without going into a lot of detail, last year, 2019, we had 5 major surgeries in our household, and each one set our household into crisis mode, survival mode. And I know that I looked for resources online to find out how do you homeschool in crisis? How do you function in crisis? And I just didn't see a lot. There wasn't a lot out there. So I would like to share with other moms who might be functioning in crisis mode, and how do you survive? How do you put one foot down in front of the other?
That's a big challenge for people. And I know, Jennifer, you probably have dealt with not necessarily the identical situation that Carol did, but you are feeling the effects of crisis also, aren't you?
Well, yes. My family, we've been homeschooling for 7 years now. But even with this pandemic that's been happening now, even though we do still homeschool, it has greatly affected my children in a lot of different ways. And so we've kind of had to take a step back and reevaluate what we're doing and change things even within this crisis that we're facing right now.
It's interesting because you ladies have dealt with homeschooling, having the children at home with you, but you usually have the ability to take the children and go do functions that are a part of your schooling outside of your house. But now what has happened is, due to the fact that our public schools are closed for a long period of time, we now have children at home that are not allowed to even go out and participate just as a homeschooling child would. But in addition to it, the parents are home and they are not familiar with these types of skills that are needed to help process what they are facing. And one of the biggest things is crisis. Now, I understand crisis does create grieving. And if you were going to address the grieving aspect of the situation we're in right now and with children at home and the parents and everything, what would you have to say about that, Carol?
I would say be aware of your children's reactions to this. They may be having behaviors that are not normal for them, and that could be because they're mourning the loss of their routine, their classroom teachers, their friends that they see at school, their youth group kids, their Sunday school friends, their church friends, their neighborhood friends. I mean, everything got pulled out from underneath them, and they could just be going through a normal grieving pattern. And we might not recognize it because, well, you're still with your family, but you know, even our homeschool kids are grieving the loss of going to youth group and going to music groups and athletic groups, and they're lonely, they're bored, and they're mourning.
Well, and that was a great first point that you brought out. Recognize your child reactions, because that's how this falls under that category, doesn't it? I think also that, do you think that the parents are mourning and grieving also?
Oh yeah, because their life is, I've seen on Facebook lots of moms mourning, I can't celebrate my birthday with my family, I can't celebrate my children's birthday with their friends, I miss my friends at church, I miss going to work, or I miss being able to go to work and do my work there, I'm having to work at home. And yeah, the parents are mourning too.
Jennifer, what would you say is the biggest challenge when it comes to recognizing your child's reactions as you're doing the homeschooling in this kind of a situation?
Well, you're trying to recognize your child's reactions, and you have to also be able to recognize your own reactions too. Just like we were saying, it's not just the kids that are going through mourning, you know, it's the parents as well. And so it's trying to give both the kids and the parents some grace in this time. We have to give ourselves and our kids grace and permission, really, to mourn, and really have to try to turn the negative thoughts around back into positive things and encouraging things. And yes, this pandemic is a terrible thing, and yes, we can't go out and see our friends and be a part of all of our activities as we normally do. And I have 3 very extroverted children, so they are suffering greatly by not being able to talk to their friends and hang out, I guess, with their friends as much as they normally did. But we try to show them the positives, that they can still see their friends on video calls and things like that. And, you know, now we have time to do other things as a family that we couldn't necessarily do before. So we try to always bring it back, take their negative thoughts and try and bring it positive.
Now, I know it's important that when we're dealing with children, not only in this type of situation, but in generalization, to be honest with your own personal feelings without focusing on the negative yourself. I think that as adults, there's a tendency to not stop and think that the words that we're speaking are being absorbed by that child, and the stressors that we're feeling as an adult is amping up in the heart of the child, because they don't have the components to be able to deal with it the way that quote unquote adults are supposed to deal with it. So would you say that it would be wise for the parents to be very aware of what they're verbalizing about this so that they don't create fear?
Yeah, I know last year when we went through our big medical issues, I had to be very careful not to give my burdens to the children. I had to handle mine away from them, whether it was calling and venting to a safe person and getting it out, whether it was just spending time in worship and letting the music just take the worries away, or whatever it was. I had to deal with my emotions before I could go to my kids and help them. Because if I hadn't dealt with them, how could I expect them when they're just, you know, elementary, junior high, high school? How can they do what I can't?
Very good point. That's excellent. Now, as we're processing having children at home, I don't know about you also, is I had children that were totally different in the way that they looked at things. One was very concrete and one was very abstract. One was very to the point, another one was very creative. And so how do you as a parent respect their individuality and help them learn in the best way that they can? Who wants to answer that?
I can start, I guess. So I would definitely say start watching your child. How are they learning? Are they learning by movement? I have two kids who have to move constantly. Sometimes if we're reading, they have to kind of be walking around or flipping around on the floor or something. And it seems like they're not listening, but when I come back and ask them questions, they've got everything down. So they definitely listening. They just needed to move. Maybe they learn best with songs or writing or reading. There's so many different learning styles out there. We also have to kind of look at how long is their attention span. You know, older kids definitely have a much longer attention span, but even so, it's not as long as ours, right? So you have to keep their attention span in mind and be ready to kind of switch things up when you see that their attention span is not going to last much longer.
That's a good point. Now, environment is very important to learning. And I know for myself that I can get very distracted by things that are the circumference of my view. I know it's there, I see it, so it's very difficult for me to focus on this. When you have children, Carol, what would you say would be the best way to help them create an environment, considering that many of them probably have limited access to being able to change the way their house is, to help them to create a place where learning can be beneficial to the children?
Like, I have one who's very visually stimulated. If he sees anything happening, he's got to be right there with you and see. When he was littler, I actually used to set him at the coffee table in a little bitty chair facing the window. So if he had to look up, all he saw was the window and not what his sisters were doing. Where my girls are a little more auditory. If they hear anything coming out of my phone, oh, wait, what's that, Mom? And I have to make sure everything's silent for them. So and one of them is a very verbal learner. She has to say everything out loud. Okay, well, if you need to say it out loud, then just go up to your room and say it out loud and then come back down in 5 minutes, because the other kids are going to get distracted. So we just kind of have to balance and, yeah, cut off the visual distractions, the auditory distractions. And then sometimes they just need to get up and move around and do PE and sing. I know our youngest, if he starts going in a daze, I need to get him doing push-ups. And then once he's done some push-ups, he's ready to learn again. It's like the little Energizer bunny. You have to recharge the battery for his brain. It's really funny to watch.
How about you, Carol? How did you Jennifer, how did you set up your home to be able to do the learning?
Well, mostly we're at the kitchen table, but sometimes we're in different spots. And so I really like to put them where they're comfortable. And sometimes they're comfortable sitting on the couch. Sometimes they're comfortable laying on the floor. So I try to give them some freedom in that. If they're doing things on the computer, they know that they have to be where I can see exactly what they're doing and what's on the computer. So we do have boundaries that we set as well. And we do try to limit distractions, but I find that I don't want to limit too many distractions because I want them to be able to learn how to focus amid distractions as well. Because in life, you know, things are going on in the background, and we have to be able to focus even when other things are going on.
Well, I've had to, now that I'm working at home also, I've had to take a folding table and put it up against my French doors so I can look outside and have my house at my back. So I totally understand the necessity for the children. I also understand that sometimes it's a good choice to shift them at different places in the house to create different opportunities for learning. like moving them from the kitchen table to possibly, like you said, in the living room where they can do some activity. Have you found that to be a help at all, or do you use those techniques at all, either Carol or Jennifer?
It depends on what the need is.
Mhm.
They have a tendency that when I walk out of the room, they go haywire. So I have to bring my work to the table so I can do it along with them. But that enables them to see me exercising a good work ethic, like, hey, you know, be quiet because you're distracting me from my work and we need my work to help support our family. So it's just good for them. There's certain times of the day where they do go to separate rooms to practice their music, and but yeah, it's as needed. And sometimes one needs to walk around the kitchen to say their memorization stuff that they have to learn. It just depends on the situation. You got to be flexible, and that's the advantage you have at home. Other, you know, outside of a classroom with no, yeah, that has desks where you have to have people quiet because there's 20 kids in the room and they have to be respectful.
It gives you a lot of respect for our public teachers. They having to balance all of that. It just
Yes.
amazes me. I can understand. I'm sure they like having a little bit of a break, but I understand also how much they miss the children and all of the load of material that is probably weighing in the back of their mind. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to do this, was to help the parents be more equipped so that the public teachers can feel like things are being done also and put their hearts to ease. So structure seems to be a very big thing. Why would that be the case?
I know for our kids, each time we had a big surgery, we'd take about a week off where we were all in survival mode. And then the next week, we pretty much had to jump back into things. Otherwise, there's a tendency to spiral down into a sense of feeling purposeless. I have no reason for what I'm doing. You can spiral down into depression, hopelessness. You have to keep doing something. It gives the kids a sense of security to know that every day they're going to wake up and they're going to do some school lessons, or they're going to have Bible time, or they're going to do story time. There has to be some kind of routine because that gives them security to know from one day to the next what's going to happen. Even if it's a different routine than what they had at school, it's still important to know that mom and dad are there and they're providing structure for them.
That's a good word. Did you have anything to add, Jennifer, on that?
I would disagree completely with exactly what she said. Yes, structure is important. They need that and they thrive. Most kids, they thrive in having structure. It's a way that they feel loved.
And secure. That's good. Okay, I think it would be a good idea to go ahead and go to our second point. Can you remind me what the first point was again? Can we rehash what that was?
Recognize your child's reactions to the crisis.
Okay. Now the second one is just as important. And I think that there seems to be a tendency sometimes for parents to look at a curriculum or look at material that is required and they think, well, I don't have this material, so what do I do? So what is a good second point that could help us out with that?
Jen, do you want to take that one?
Sure. I would say using the right tools to adapt. If you're schooling at home, and you're being provided lesson plans from your child's teacher, you know, you can use those lesson plans, but you also have flexibility at home to make those lesson plans work for you, for your children. And one of the first things that you can do is by treating your kids with respect. Treat them how you want to be treated by your own boss.
Okay.
Yeah. And also kind of going back to a little bit of the first point when you're kind of watching your kids and their reactions is if you see that they're working on something and maybe it's just too difficult or they need to take a break from it, just switch gears, do something different, engage a different part of their brain. My youngest does not like math. I don't know why. I love math, but that's okay. She doesn't like math. And so more than 30 minutes of math and her brain is completely fried. And so she needs time to just go outside or play with her stuffed animals in her room for just a little bit to just give her brain a little bit of a break before she's ready to come back to another difficult activity. So just recognizing that and giving them that change of gears, because once you change your gears in your brain and then you come back to something, you're much better able to get through that activity and get through it well.
So you redirect them is basically what you're doing, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So obviously the children are now in an environment of learning that they're not familiar with, because their learning typically has been at the public school. So their environment has shifted. Should there be an expectation that their behavior be identical to what it is in the public school? Or how would that be altered, if at all, Carol?
I think, we addressed a little bit of this earlier, how, at home, we can go to different areas of the house. But for example, I always went to school. I loved school. I loved the classroom. I loved the structure. But yet, like my son, he's a boy. He has lots of energy. He has to fidget. He has to have something in his hands. And, like Jen said, as long as he can tell me back what we were just talking about it and summarize it back to me, I know he paid attention. When he can't do that, then I take whatever the fidget thing away is and I redirect him to do something else. Sometimes he has to walk around the house while he's saying stuff out loud. You can't do that in a classroom, but it's perfectly fine at school. And sometimes you have kinetic learners, which he is. Then you have the verbal learners, like one of our other kids are. She has to say everything out loud. But you can't do that in a classroom. There's too many kids. They would distract him. But, you just send them to the other room. Or one of our children works really well. She learns great in discussion. So I can talk things out to her. And instead of having her write everything down, I have her tell it to me. And then maybe I'll write it down for her and she'll have to edit it. So then I'm covering her grammar editing. She can tell me where I maybe purposely left out a capital letter or a period or a comma. And we're kind of covering two birds with one stone. We're covering the science subject and we're covering language arts on how she can correct my terrible writing that I didn't write properly. And then she thinks that's funny because she gets to correct mom.
Now we're kind of, I'm sure that a lot of the children are in that place where they're saying, woohoo, we've got a 3-week vacation and it just keeps going on. How can we help the families recognize the value of not really treating it as if it's a vacation? And in what way can we do that? Jennifer, do you have any ideas on that?
Well, I would definitely say the first way is do not let every day be a pajama day. It's fun at first, but you don't get very much done if you're always in your pajamas, and the kids don't either. They have to get dressed. They have to have that sense of purpose to start their day and to get going. And continuing a routine. Also, making sure that so if the kids are home more often now, then one, your house is probably not going to be quite as clean as it was before. So now you can enlist your kids with some extra chores and make that a family way to get everything done together. So those are.
So are you saying, I'm sorry for interrupting, but are you saying that we might actually get home ec back into the system again?
That is absolutely correct. Culinary arts is at lunchtime, so yeah.
Good. I think we got time. I'm sorry for interrupting. It came to me and how that is missing. Continue, Jennifer.
It absolutely is. But yeah, my kids do have to make their own lunches. So that kind of gives me a little bit of a break during the lunchtime. It gives them tools to learn how to make things for themselves and make balanced meals for themselves. So that's another thing that they're learning. It could be that, when your kids are at home, it says in the Bible to teach your kids when they lie down, when they rise up, pretty much all the time. And now you have this opportunity to do that, and you can really make everyday little things into a learning opportunity.
That is good. I think it is also a challenge, however, because as a culture, we've gotten to a point where we allow our children to determine the course of events rather than holding them accountable to the discussion or the command that we've given to them to complete. And so that is I think that's going to be a real hard challenge having children at home, because kids have a way of wearing us down. But mom, but mom, but mom. And you finally give in, and then you regret giving in. So I think that understanding that when they're doing this homework, that they need to get it completed before they're allowed to play with their dolls or their Legos or their building blocks, whatever it is, that to use that as almost a reward. Would that be a good way to look at it?
Oh yeah. One practical thing that I do, and I think Jennifer uses it too, is a checklist system. So I have the kids, they know everything that's expected of them for that day. And you got to keep it reasonable. You can't have adult expectations for an 8-year-old. But when you finish these things, then you can go play Legos. Then you can go watch your movie, or you can go play outside. Or after you do these 2 subjects, you can go play outside, and then you can come back in. But another thing we do is we start breakfast, and we all eat breakfast. We have to be at the table at a certain time. And if you're not there, sorry, you missed breakfast that morning, and you'll survive. You'll get up in time tomorrow.
Way to go.
And that was an idea. That was an idea we got from Kevin Liebman, Dr. Kevin Liebman. He has some great tools like that. But we start with Bible reading. We'll sit down, we'll read something from the chronological Bible, and then we'll go into some read alouds where we read history together. And that creates a couple things. One, it creates an easy routine. It's one of my favorite parts of the day. It's a very concrete start to, this is school time. You're dressed, you got your clothes on, you've eaten your breakfast, it's school time. And it also creates a bonding. I mean, who doesn't love read aloud time where you read stories and then we talk about them? Like, what happened in this story? What did you think about that character's reaction? And that brings stability and bonding. Our kids have just grown so much. I think one of the things that helped them get through last year's crisis was that we were together and we were talking about things, and we were enjoying fiction stories and true stories together. And that brought us together. And I think it really reduced the amount of trauma that our kids experienced from all the things we went through. And that can help right now with kids who are grieving the loss of everything normal, to have it replaced by a loving relational routine at home.
Yeah, it creates community in a new and strong way for you. And I think too, if we look at it from the standpoint, we are creating a memory that we would not have had if this hadn't happened. We have the opportunity to build relationship with our children in ways that up until this point have been prevented because of school, because of work, because of all of the normal stressors that takes us out of the home and away from family community. So this is a good thing to some aspect, that we can utilize it as a plus rather than a minus for our family and our children. Now, I think we need to move on if we can. There is a third point. Did we cover that already? No, we didn't. How do we deal with curriculum as it's being laid out from the public school? Because I can remember my daughters coming home asking for help with algebra, let's just say, okay, or long division. And so I started doing it the way I was taught to do it. Oh no, Mom, that's not right. Well, excuse me, it is how we did it. Yeah, but Mom, we don't do it that way. And it just made me want to go, so with this the curriculum and all the new styles of teaching that the children are being brought into, would it behoove a parent to say, you know what, why don't you teach me, show me how this is done, teach me how to do that, and do the problem together? Would that be a good way to make the curriculum serve you?
Yeah, I think so, because kids like to show what they know, and it makes them feel important to think that I get to teach Mom something.
Oh yeah,
They
kids
get
love
a kick
it
out
when
of it.
adults are dorks. So would that be what would be the third point then? Would it having to do with curriculum?
Yeah, I would say make that curriculum work for you. So many of these teachers were told, you have a day to plan out the whole rest of the quarter and you have to give all the students materials. That's a ridiculous request of the teachers. And it was an emergency setting. So the teachers are going to throw out everything they can. And they're getting used to this new format too, doing the online instruction. So I think the biggest thing is to keep in communication with your
Yes.
children's teachers and let them know this is a struggle I'm having. What do you suggest? Because really, they've seen your kid for the last 3 quarters of the school year. They know what your kid's like when it comes to learning. And the two of you can be together and you're a team and you can come up with really good solutions for them. And they have some great ideas. I know for online math, like you just talked about, Khan Academy is great. There's been times when my kids won't listen to me to do a math fact, and I'll be like, okay, go listen to Khan Academy. And they're like, oh, okay. They'll do what that teacher says, not what I say. I don't know. I was a classroom teacher myself for several years before we had children. So, I get that classroom setting, but yeah, communication is so important because the teachers really do want your children's best interest to come to
I
pass.
think the biggest tool that you have in your toolbox is that public teacher. It not only honors the time that they've invested in your child, it honors them, their learning, their skill, their intelligence. And when we value them enough to ask their opinion, anybody is encouraged by that.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure that would be a help. So, Jennifer, do you have anything to add to that concept of making the curriculum work for you or serve you?
Yeah, I would definitely. I completely agree with Carol and staying in constant communication with your child's public school teacher. But also, it's a good time to kind of know your own way of how you like to teach.
Oh,
Um,
that's
yeah. So, do you like to do hands-on? Are you more of a verbal teacher? Do you like discussions? Do you like worksheets? Do you like online? So it's a good chance for you to kind of figure out what's your style and how are you going to match your style with your child's style as well. So it's you kind of get to mesh the two together. Um, and so you also kind of look and see um, I guess it's not necessarily the curriculum, but the time of day also could help determine when you should tackle maybe those harder subjects. I know at our house, we always do math first. We just do because that's the hardest thing. We just kind of, rip the Band-Aid off and get it done. So we don't have to worry about it. And then everything else is just a breeze because, our brains have been overtaxed and now we can kind of breathe a sigh of relief.
I think that's good to recognize that there is a rhythm of the household that needs to be considered, as well as the rhythm of the child and even as of the adult if they're supposed to be working from home to maintain income coming into the family coffers. So I think that we had talked about a fourth one that kind of ties into what we were saying earlier about a schedule. Can you give us a little bit more on what the fourth tip might be?
Make a guiding schedule. And I use the word guiding because you can micromanage your time and you can schedule every 10 minutes. But really, do you like to be scheduled every 10 minutes? Do you want your boss to schedule every 10 minutes for you? No, we don't like that. So I create on paper, I do have an Excel spreadsheet that does spread out every 10 minutes, but I don't follow it. It's my guide. Okay, what are we going to do next? We do Bible, then we do history. Okay, well now I've got to work with you in math, so I'm going to use language arts. And it's a guide and it just kind of hits a rhythm. Okay, well 10:30, our teenager gets antsy and she wants to do PE. Okay, well did you finish the schoolwork? Okay, to go do PE. It's a rhythm. And then we do a few more subjects, then we do lunch, and then they do some chores because they make the messes, they got to clean them up, and then we do music. And then when I have everybody off in their own rooms practicing music, I get some quiet time. I know I need that by that time of day. I'm just like, don't talk to me. I don't want to see another person. The introverted me needs to recharge. So that's part of our family's natural rhythm. And then after that, I juggle my job and I teach piano or whatever instruments coming in. Obviously, they're not coming to the house now, they're coming to my computer. But that gives me morning is homeschool time. Afternoon is where I earn my income. And I don't know, Jen, how do you juggle all those?
Well, I do it somewhat similarly. We have a schedule and we have times, but we're flexible with those times as well. But I think it's really important to make sure that you write down times for things so you can kind of really see, hey, are my expectations for the day realistic or not? Because I would, I can have a lot of things on my to-do list, and not all the hours of the day to complete that to-do list. And I don't want to set my kids up for failure, and I don't want to set our family up for failure. So I do make sure that we look at the times, and I do have different times where I'm scheduled for meetings for my ministry. And so I schedule specific times where I am working, and sometimes it's in the morning and sometimes it's in the afternoon. But I tell my kids, hey, I'm going to be with you to help you at this time, and I'm going to be in a meeting at this time. And so while you have me with you, that's your time for us to really, get things done. Because otherwise, if you're not focused on what you're doing here, you're going to have to do it on your own, because this is my time for my work. So we've kind of had to do that as well. And it seems to work really well, and it gives the kids and me respect for each other's time as well, and I think that's really important.
It's an important thing in our lives that we have opportunity not only for quiet time and reflection, but to breathe and to receive, especially for mothers. Now, I know that there's going to be fathers that are at home dealing with this, because it might be a situation where they're the parent at home and the wife is the parent that is out of the house working, or they're taking turns with the teaching. But no matter how we look at it, we need personal time. And there is a challenge of becoming so overwhelmed with everything that seems to be required of the day that we don't receive it. So how would you encourage people in this, recognizing this needs to be, well, I would say it probably needs to be our fifth point, our fifth tip, and that is to find sources of encouragement. So let me ask you this, Carol, what do you do to find ways to encourage and build yourself up?
First of all, I am not a morning person. I'm not a morning person. I'm not a night person. I'm in the middle. But I do get up before the kids do, so that I can have some time just to read the Bible, study a little bit, maybe listen to some worship music. And if I don't have that, especially, you can see it building up. Like after a couple of days, I am a grouch, I'm cranky, I can't keep my perspective. And, like we said in the first point, you have to deal with your own emotions before you can expect the kids to handle theirs, because you have to have tools. So in that time that I spend with God before the kids wake up, that's where I get my tools. One, to help me, and two, to help them as we sit around the table and things come up, like, Mom, I miss my friends. When am I going to see my friends again? Or, last year, when they were so worried about the health issues that were happening, well, we could refer them back to, well, God encouraged me with this morning, or I found this Bible verse. Does this help you? And it's so cute and rewarding as a parent to see your kids have a light go on, say, oh, Mommy, that really helped me. Thank you. Or just to know that I'm struggling. Sometimes I'll come to the table and read something especially when we were going through Psalms, and they're like, oh my goodness, and I couldn't stop the tears, and they'd look at me like, what's wrong? I'm like, kids, this is hard on me too. And it's okay to cry. It's okay to mourn this. But because I had that time in the morning with God, I was able to come to them with the tools to handle it and not dump on them my emotions.
That's good. Jennifer, how about you? How do you deal with the time for yourself in the midst of all of this?
I am a morning person, so I have no problem getting up early, and nobody else in my house is a morning person, so that's helpful. So I do get up early, but sometimes things come up, and just like Carol was saying, if I don't get that time in the morning to really kind of center myself and get right with God first thing, it really throws the day off, and it throws it, the longer it happens, the worse that it gets. So I think that's very important. And it's also, I think, important to make sure that we give our kids that time, that some quiet time. I mean, we do Bible discussions and Bible reading together, but then they also have time in the day that they can kind of read through it themselves and have their own quiet time. And I think that is very important for them. And also, you have to give yourself some grace. I have learned that the hard way, I think. But yeah, you don't have to have the answer to every question. If you don't finish a worksheet or something else, it's okay. It's fine. It's just fine. You also have to give grace to your child's post-school teacher as well, because it's not just us that have been thrown into it. They've been thrown into it as well. And so I'm sure that they are, scrambling to try and figure all of this new technology and everything else out as well. So it's just a lot of grace to go around.
That's true. And I think that for those of you out there that might be watching this and you are not a person of faith or like faith as we are, I would recommend that you find opportunities to just have a time of quiet. Maybe have your children go off and read a book for a half an hour, or have them color, and just have it be a quiet time so that all of you can regroup. And then that way, when you come together as a family again, you can continue with a new, a gain of momentum, because you've had that pause time. I'm Renee Duncan with Alaska Christian Women's Ministries. I am also one of the video bloggers, as well as I have my own ministry called A New Now, where we live in possibilities. And I just want to encourage you, if you would like to go to alaskachristianwomensministries.com, we have many blogs that come available every single day, and these two lovely women are part of all of that. And I know that it will build you up, encourage you, and create an opportunity of community for you. We pray that you have a good time with your children, that you don't lose any hair, that you gain lots of smiles, and that you have many moments that they become snapshots of joy in your life. Thank you for joining us, Carol and Jennifer, and for you out there, we appreciate your time. God bless. You guys, I'm realizing I didn't introduce myself. I didn't say anything about me. I'm the host. Good land.
Everyone knows you.
I don't know about that, but I hope I
Takes it, Jen.
I'm recording right now.
you're recording.